Oh, we're going to switch. Okay, so I'm Diane Brady. This is Juliet de Baubigny. And then in the middle, we have Ken Parks, Chief Content Officer of Spotify. And I'm going to introduce you again, Juliet de Baubigny, who is a partner with Kleiner Perkins. We are talking sharing economy. So is everybody out of their fabulous meditative state? Yes. Cheers. So I was going to wear my fabulous yellow jeans that I found in Park Slope, but I was told that is the garbage picking economy and not the sharing economy. So I'm Diane Brady. I'm with Bloomberg Business Week. And this is a fabulous topic because I don't know how many of you have used Uber in the room. Raise your hands. Okay, Airbnb. Excellent. Renting out your bathroom. I'm all in favor of that. Rent a runway. There is so much going on in this space. And yet we've seen a lot of governments basically try to ban this stuff. Now they're taxing it. So we have two experts who are going to talk to us about what they see on the horizon, what they're doing themselves. And then I hope it's very interactive with the audience in terms of talking about what it means to you, what's around the corner, and how much more can I rent out? What can I rent out next that I can kind of loan my arm for a few minutes or something? So let me start by getting each of you to talk a little bit about how you define this and a sense of what's exciting. I'm going to start with you because I think Spotify, I think Napster's sharing. That didn't work out so well. So in what way are you the sharing economy?
So as you point out, sharing music is not new. Actually, for the history of recorded music, people have wanted to share it. Music is probably one of the most social objects there is, so it lends itself to sharing. As you mentioned, Napster was a watershed event. It made sharing really, really, really simple. People were so excited about the ability to share at the speed of light that they became really criminals in mass numbers. They were so excited about it. So that sucked a lot of air out of the room for people who were involved in providing music, creators and people in the supply chain. Fast forward a few years after some massive disruption that happened with Napster, and Spotify has created a platform that allows sharing to be monetized. So we think of it as a dead simple way for people who want to share with one another, and for creators to share with millions of fans.
Yep.
A simple way that crucially has a monetization element attached to all of those transactions. So the industry that I'm in today, for its entire history, derived value from scarcity. Let's make it really difficult to share. Let's make it kind of expensive to listen to music, to one where now we're enabling billions and billions of transactions, sharing transactions to happen, which is an enormous opportunity. And as a result of having a good business model attached to that sharing, the industry has started to return to health in key markets.
Excellent. Okay, so money investor. Okay, give us a sense, Juliet, of, first of all, tell us what Kleiner Perkins, in terms of your portfolio, what you have in there, and what does the sharing economy mean to you, and what is it not? Because it's one of those definitions you can drive a truck through.
So let me start with your second question first. I think the sharing economy is sort of a challenging phrase that, like anything, is sort of becoming a little bit overused.
Yeah. Who doesn't like to share?
Exactly. I mean, to me, it means, really a number of things. Fundamentally, it means using slack capacity. And slack capacity around people or places or things, as Ken has just said. I thought it was fascinating, going to Ken's point, that when U2 last Tuesday, with the launch of the new iPhone 6, launched their album, 33 million downloads within 5 days. It's pretty incredible, and how people immediately and intrinsically want to share. So for me, fundamentally,
then it shows up on your phone, and you're like, I don't want U2. Like, stop sharing U2 with me. Go away.
Right. Well, and but the nice thing is, then you can delete it should you want. So sharing is about slack capacity, and it's about, to me, optimizing efficiency. And as an investor, what's really exciting, and I think Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, said this best, it's about creating opportunities within that, particularly for entrepreneurs, and a lot of them for women.
So one of the things that where it seemed to be at this stage where it's almost like when there were 130 car companies and then there were 3, there's so many places out there, even just in the car space. How do you spot the winners and how do you spot the losers? I mean, obviously Airbnb seems to be with us, Uber's with us. You must get a lot of stuff come your way, and even Ken, if you want to weigh in on this, I'm curious, what should we pay attention to and what might be gone tomorrow?
Well, just a couple of quick comments. I think that Uber and Airbnb are 2 of the most exciting companies out there right now. I don't think they've even become started in terms of their potential. And they're not just, I mean, if you take the case of Uber, it's not just about, sharing car service. This is about evolution of mass transportation and city planning and transit. And I think it's going to have a profound effect. I mean, what's really interesting, and I'm sort of speaking to this audience, is that for millennials, there's a different premium on sharing and a different premium on ownership. I'm going to date myself and feel really old, but I think that my generation is probably the last generation that will value home ownership, for example, as a sign that one has arrived. Whereas I think millennials are far more comfortable saying, I don't need to own to feel as though I have succeeded. I'm very comfortable sharing. In this city, for example, it is much cheaper to use Uber than to own a car. Why wouldn't you?
I've never owned a car. I could trade carbon credits with anybody in the audience. So, but I think one of the challenges, I'm a taxi driver. Yeah. I've paid a gazillion dollars to get my medallion, and there's some guy, from wherever, Bed-Stuy, who's like just kind of taking my business that I've worked so hard for. How do you create a business where that everybody can benefit? Do you have any ideas around? Is it just tax it and it will grow?
I think it starts with a dead simple proposition for users to get and to flock to. We would not enjoy the success we do if we didn't have a compelling proposition that was better than piracy in a lot of ways. So I think it starts with that. And Uber obviously has found a real need. Anybody who's taken a cab ride in New York City in the last few years knows how unsatisfying that experience can be. But to get back to the last question that Juliet answered, I think of the sharing economy as it relates to music as one in which there's an enormous amount of data that attends having billions of transactions taking place. And those data can be mined for really important insights. So for instance, the record business is one where by definition you fail most of the time when you bet on an artist becoming the next big thing. What if you could mine billions of transactions as a kind of early detection system to see what is really happening and resonating with people who are listening to music?
That's how Justin Bieber got his start, right? Hey, well, YouTube hero.
So in terms of the A&R function within record companies, you're going to see a massive shift in the way the more forward-thinking labels approach the A&R function, tapping into data. So the sharing economy for me is all about incredible insights that you can get from the data that is generated by massive sharing.
I think go ahead, Juliet.
And on that, what I was going to say is that Spotify has done that within the music industry. So you talk about regulation, and I view it sort of as disruption. So industries that are going to suffer are ones that are heavily regulated and bureaucratic. And the flip side of that is that it creates incredible opportunities for entrepreneurship and innovation. I mean, an Uber driver can earn over $100,000 a year. A stay-at-home mom or dad can utilize their Slack capacity shopping on Instacart and creating an opportunity to really use their time wisely and get rewarded for that. I think that's exciting.
I think it is too. It's interesting though, when we were looking at all the problems with Greece, one of the things was, the problem is there's such a big underground economy, gray economy, which was another way of saying there are so many people making money on the side that's not counted by the government. And that seems to be where we're at right now in terms of, for example, with Airbnb, they're charging an occupancy tax in San Francisco. With Uber, you have to be licensed. I think what's interesting is it's almost like we need a tax rabbit. How do you unleash that entrepreneurial energy in a way that's embraced versus seen as a threat? Maybe it is just a threat and that's what it is, but how do you see that working out? I'm at home, I go task rabbit. Do I have to pay tax on that? if I rent out my bedroom 300 days of a year, is that my business or is that the business of society where they should be collecting part of that income?
Well, I think Ken can speak to this really well because, what Ken and Daniel Ek have done is massively disrupt a traditional industry. But as a consumer, I look at this and say, this is really good for me.
Sure.
That I have a chance to really get access to incredible content. And as an artist, being able to distribute and have music listened to wisely. There are always going to be winners and losers. But at the end, you have to shake through it in the way that Amazon did, in the early days, understanding, tax of online revenues. So I think the challenge and the call to action for governments is going to be to continue to foster this entrepreneurial opportunity and at the same time recognize that, all industries are open to disruption. By the way, that includes education, as I think about the sharing economy. Ken, what would you say on that?
I certainly hope so. I have a daughter who is a sophomore in college, and every time I have to write that tuition check, I say, God damn, I wish that someone would disrupt this space.
There's this thing where they take retired. I saw this business where they take people who are retired and they're doing one-on-one kind of language lessons with people in Brazil and India, and I thought, what a great model.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? It's like their kids aren't calling, so
I think that area is right.
Right.
Yeah, I hope somebody in this audience will come up with a disruptive solution to the problem that I have every semester. But Spotify came into a space that had a massive problem that government was interested in fixing, which was theft on a scale that very few industries have ever experienced. So in our case, we actually have a cooperation of governments who are interested in preserving the economies of places like the UK and the United States, where intellectual property is much more a part of the fabric of the economy than in other places. But yeah, obviously the tax man, wants a vig for all this too.
What can we learn? I think that's one thing. Like, what can we learn from the music industry that you think hasn't yet been applied to some of these other sectors? It could be education. I mean, that was the question of the artist sitting there going, hold on a second, I can do only so many vodka commercials. I need to make money off my music.
I'm not sure how many lessons one can draw from the way the music industry has handled things. Maybe negative lessons, what not to do. Embrace this opportunity is what I would say. So every industry is going to get disrupted. The buggy whip industry really, took it on the chin when the automobiles. It didn't mean that we needed to prop up the buggy whip industry. I mean, things happen. Societies advance, technology evolves. Don't stand astride of it and say stop. As I said, if you're in a business that involves deriving value from scarcity, you're going to get disrupted because now technology has allowed people in mass numbers to circumvent whatever area you've staked out. So I would just say that think of the world in which everybody from creator to customer can be connected at the speed of light through a phone, which everybody on the planet just about will have very shortly, and that's an enormous opportunity. There's money to be made when you're talking about transaction volume on that scale.
Now, do we have time for questions? So do we have questions in the audience? We have one back there. I guess project. Hello, Jessie Hempel.
I'm Jessie Hempel. I'm a writer, flyer, and have long covered the sharing economy. And I'm really curious, Juliet, you mentioned that the taxi drivers would make $100,000 on Uber, but most don't. And as we raise these companies, we have a larger and larger workforce that is somewhere between regulated and gray. Do you imagine that new sort of next generation unions are going to pop up to offer them such protection? It seems to me that in a shared economy, that's because people take on more risk to success of business than they do in the types of business today.
You mentioned a couple of really interesting points, Jessie. Let me sort of, touch on one first, which is the issue of trust and protection. And what is fascinating for me as I think about the sharing economy is that it has created an environment of trust where now letting strangers into our cars, we're sharing our homes in a way that would be considered sort of crazy in a normal environment. And yet, ironically, that's what eBay started out doing 20 years ago. It was the concept, of I'm going to sell my Beanie Baby online, and you may or may not, send me your product for my money. And now, obviously, 20
But
years.
that's why PayPal, you needed some sort of.
But that came a lot. That came a lot later. And so that initial concept of trust and sort of that, and which Pierre Omidyar really embraced, I think was important. So you touch on that, and I think that is an important angle to emphasize. In terms of sort of unions and new unions, I don't know, but I do think that if you look at Airbnb, and when they had their really big issue in San Francisco when the woman's home got ransacked, they took that really seriously. And they have a team of, I think, about 15 former prosecutors on staff. They stepped up 24-hour, customer hotline. They have, sort of $1 million.
Hunted down the person.
Absolutely, they have $1 million insurance guarantees. So these companies recognize the issue, they recognize the disruption, and I'm confident that it will evolve. And in terms of how, I don't know.
I think it is. I think it's interesting because it is evolving. You are seeing more of this move toward you can have some type of health, like collective health insurance, the way the freelancers union does. And insurers are important, right? You can kill a lot of these rent-a-car services if they say, you know what, when that guy's in your car, you're not insured. But I think what's interesting, I will do home exchange because there's a social compact. I wouldn't do Airbnb because I'm like, who are these people and how do I know they're not going to destroy my home? So I think that is.
But you know what's interesting, and I don't know, I'm curious sort of if others in the audience have found this, but and again, maybe it's just because I'm old, but I remember when Uber came out, first of all, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to take Uber to the airport. I'm a little nervous that my limo isn't going to be there to take me, and will it show up? I might miss my flight. And of course, now we don't even think about it. And the same with Airbnb. This summer, I actually used Airbnb for the first time, and I thought this is such an incredible experience, and it has sort of opened up a whole new way of traveling. So I think a lot of this is consumer adoption. And again, I'm just an old laggard that just takes a little bit of time to get.
People professionalize it, right? They start to put fresh towels in their bathroom because, hey, people like that. So is there anything else? I don't even know any other questions from the audience. Anybody here? Who here is taking advantage of the sharing economy from a revenue generating point of view? Look at the subtle hands. Don't tax me. No. But is it, what are you doing? Is it Airbnb? What is it that you, and have you had good experiences with it? So I think that's the part, the proof is in, I didn't like home exchange when I first did it, but then I'm like, God, here I am in a 3-bedroom house, basically in Paris. What would I pay for this?
Right.
And they're back, okay, in Brooklyn. Little did they know, but still, good for me. So I think give us a sense, as we wrap up a little bit about what's on the horizon that's intriguing to you in terms of the what's next around the corner. Could be in your industry, could be, just you're on the front lines, Juliet. You guys sort of, what news from the front, comrade? What should we be looking for? I'm excited by the impact, for example, on climate change, sharing energy, sharing sort of our power usage, which we haven't really done that much of.
Well, so much is out there. I don't know. I'm personally passionate about education. I think that I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I look at the way that they are already starting to learn and their comfort, in sort of knowledge base. I'm on the board of Product Red, and I've spent a lot of time in Africa. I look at access to education. I look at the fact that, as Ken said, the phone is, a symbol of freedom. It is your mailbox. It is your access point. And to be able to have access to that anywhere in the world, but then be educated, and you think of the empowerment opportunities that come with that, and it's pretty extraordinary. So if I were to pick one sector that I'm watching closely, it's education.
Excellent.
In the music business, I do think that mining data, all of these billions of listening events and sharing events, to become more precise in terms of sourcing talent, and also providing a more personalized experience that's more satisfactory to listeners than having the same things shoved at them all day. That's really exciting to me. I think we're just at the beginning of a really exciting age. Outside, I think that healthcare is so ripe for disruption, especially in this country.
Yeah, like a TaskRabbit.
We spend way too much money for really unsatisfactory results. So I think part of that is going to be the sharing economy as it relates to health data. Obviously, huge privacy concerns there, but when we get more comfortable with doing that, there's an enormous amount of data that's totally untapped that will allow healthcare to be delivered in a much more efficient way that's targeted to individuals.
Any new hot acts that we should be keeping an eye on?
Ishi. He is a guy
Ishi.
Ishi. He's a new act, a hip hop act in Sweden. You're going to be hearing about him real soon.
Excellent. So, Swedish hip hop and sharing economy. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the panelists. And I guess, I don't know if I introduce the next act or if they just sweep us off stage, but thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.